This happened when I was 15 years old, about 20 years ago. My parents were divorced, but had a wonderful connection by this time. However, their parenting styles were diametrically opposed. My father was a severe military man, whereas my mother was laid back, so I was living at my mother's apartment. My boyfriend lived about a mile from my mom's house at the time, and I would sneak over to his place after his parents had gone to bed. His parents were strict like my dad and did not allow us to spend much time together outside of school because he was an only child. I would leave my place at 9:30, 10 p.m. and rush over to his house as soon as his parents went to bed. We'd stay up until about 1:30 a.m. and I would go for a jog home. During my jogs, I would make it a point to be really cautious. I was, after all, a 14-year-old girl jogging in the dark. Nobody knew where I was, and this was before the development of cell phones. I was approximately a half a block from my house, and I always felt relieved once I was back in my area and could see my mother's apartment building. As I continued to jog, I came to the end of a driveway when this van appeared out of nowhere and came to a complete halt in front of me. I had no idea it was going to happen. There's no spidey sense here. I came to a halt so quickly that I nearly bumped my face to the passenger door. When I looked up, I noticed two older guys in the front seat staring at me with their windows rolled down. I could feel their eyes burning into every inch of my body as they fixed their stare on me slowly. The passenger inquired if I wanted a ride by leaning out the window as close to me as he could without opening his door. He then gave me the creepiest smile I'd ever seen. Everything else melted away as I stared into his dark eyes. It was almost as if they were the only thing that existed at the time. I could feel my fight or flight response kick in as my eyesight zoomed in on them. I dashed in the direction they had come from. I knew the alley they'd exited was too tiny for their van to turn around in. To do a U-turn, they had to pull out onto the roadway. In my entire life, I have never ran so fast. I knew I wouldn't be able to get to my mother's building before they returned, so I dashed to the nearest building and hid behind a large trash can. My heart was racing, and I was closing my mouth to keep my breathing and muffled cries from being heard. I could hear the rocks in the loose asphalt being crushed by the tires as they slowly crept by the trash can. They stopped in front of it for what felt like an eternity and whispered something to each other I couldn't make out. They didn't get out, but kept moving forward slowly, stopping by each of the other buildings' trash cans. I waited until they were out of sight and bolted the rest of the way home. As soon as I locked the door at my mom's apartment, I sat on the floor and cried so hard, making my mom awake. She was surprised to see me like this, and I told her everything in total panic. She reported the incident to the police. That was the last time I ever jogged to my boyfriend's house.
I used to be a very harsh and furious person when I was younger. My father used to abuse me and I was frequently beaten at school. You couldn't show any vulnerability at that school because you'd get beaten up and bullied even more. I guess a part of me just operated on autopilot. I'd do awful things because I felt forced to, and while it was messed up, in reflection it's now a part of my past. I'm gay, but no one knew it. My family's also unaware. They're strong Catholics, and I'm confident that if they found out, they would have abandoned me. My father used to talk about how much he disliked gay people. It was something I didn't want him to know because if he did, he would despise me and he'd be embarrassed of me. At the age of 17, I ended up sleeping with a man. It was a teacher from my high school. All that matters was that a guy with whom I used to hang out once grabbed my phone and read my texts. When he discovered I was gay, he began to bully me for months. I ordered him to stop. He would mock me and shout it at people while they were around. I tried to persuade my parents to stop him, but instead he began blackmailing me, threatening to tell my parents if I didn't do what he said. I had to keep giving him money and do his homework for him, and since he took all of my video games and bullfrog, he used that information against me to blackmail me into doing anything he wanted whenever he needed something. He made my life a living hell. He'd also force me to say awful things to people in order to make them upset or hate me. The worst thing he did was force me to ask out some arrogant, overweight girl and then dump her after kissing her. Because I was afraid of my father finding out, I did everything he said. I even deleted all of my social media accounts and smashed my phone because I was afraid he would contact me outside of school and make things worse. I felt helpless to speak up or seek help since he had this one thing to hold against me for the rest of my life. So I devised a strategy. I was able to persuade the man that I had been sleeping with to pay me $800 in exchange for a one-night stand. I had nothing to regret. Then I went to a dealer and bought as much unlawful stuff as I could. I also purchased a set of knives. I put everything in that boy's bag, and the sniffer dog found it on him when he passed through our campus. He was immediately expelled from school and unable to communicate with me outside of school because I didn't have access to social media or a phone which through he could contact me. I believed he was placed on some sort of program for very misbehaving children. It was the most deliberate and ruthless act I've ever done. It didn't help his case that his residence was raided afterwards and his father was associated with those substances. I'm sure the kid continued insisting that he didn't know where the drugs came from, and I'm sure they didn't believe him because they saw his druggy father. When it happened, however, I felt absolutely no sympathy. I thought he was a moron for repeatedly testing me, and I was relieved when I heard that he'd been ejected. I mellowed a lot as I grew older and matured. I grew to be gentler. Looking back, I'm sorry for what I did. I'm sure there was a better way to handle the matter, but I was at a loss for words at the time and desperate to keep my secret from my family. My parents were unaware of my secret. I've since moved away from my hometown and my family, and while life isn't perfect, I'm grateful I'm no longer in that environment.
Entitled Mum wants more discount because 25% is not enough off. Not my story, but my father-in-law's. Also, don't know if I should post this here or somewhere else. I'm gonna give it a try. Well, good for you. So, my father-in-law owns a child's clothing / accessory store since 1994. He's been in the business for a long time and has his fair share of choosing beggars. He has told me countless stories, but this one I had the pleasure to witness because it just happened. Today is my father-in-law's birthday. My wife is a doctor and is on duty, so she won't be able to attend any type of celebration, and I know how upset he is because of that. She's daddy's little princess, even though she's 32 years old. So I came here to take him for lunch. He was happy. We both like cars and football, soccer for Americans. Therefore, we're gonna have plenty to talk about during lunch. As we were walking, lo and behold, enters the star of our story. Let's call her Karen, of course. Karen goes to the saleswoman, SW, and everything seems normal at first. Then she starts to find flaws at every single thing she picks. This shirt, it's stained. It wasn't. This short, it's dirty. It wasn't. You get the idea. Typical Karen, no different than he's used to dealing with. He hangs and waits for a bit while the situation unfolds. She picks a bunch of things that are on sale. The products on sale were almost perfect and they were advertised as such. Everything on sale, 25% off. Good deal, right? Nope, not for her, not for the Duchess. So here's the exchange. Side note, she picked over 20 items. So Karen asked, how much is the total? The saleswoman says $197.90. With the discount, only $148. What? How? Isn't this supposed to be on sale? It is on sale, mom. You're taking this many products for almost $50 less. What? Impossible. I want more discount because I'm paying cash and I know the owner. He's almost like family. At this point, me and my father-in-law just stared at each other in awe. Who the frick is this person? Mom, please don't scream. I can't give more of a discount. The owner won't allow me. Are you deaf? Stupid? Get me the owner here. This is where my father-in-law stepped in, asked what was going on, even though we were just less than 2 meters away, around 7 foot. This is gonna be good. Karen started to tell him a sob story about how she's a single mum, can't pay the bills, is struggling financially, and all that typical BS. My father-in-law was having none of it. Look, I heard it all. I was right behind you. I'm not gonna give you any more of a discount. That's your total. Pay it or leave it. She began screaming like a banshee, saying we were discriminating her as a single broke mum, and she whipped out her phone to film us, her brand new iPhone 11 Pro Max. My father-in-law doesn't know anything about phones, but when I told him how expensive those were, he kicked her out. After that, we went out and had kebabs for lunch. Thanks for the birthday present, you female dog. My boyfriend's entitled cousin tried to stop us from sleeping in the same room in his home. We'll call the cousin Karen, her husband Todd, and their kids. Well, yes, of course. There had been a terrible fire in Karen and Todd's home, and while they and their kids were unharmed, their possessions were destroyed. They did have insurance, but claimed that they couldn't afford a hotel room till things got sorted out. Normally, my boyfriend's parents would have allowed them to stay at their place, but they were out of town and wouldn't return until a couple of days later. And they knew better than to let this family have free reign over their house. Now, my boyfriend's sister was suddenly unwell and unable to have guests in her home. I do not blame her one bit, I would have done the same. So that meant that the responsibility to be there for family fell squarely on my boyfriend's shoulders. He agreed to let them stay in his guest bedroom till his parents got back. I tried to talk him out of it, but my man is kind and caring to a fault. It's what I love about him most. But sometimes it's also the one thing I wish I could change about him. Anyway, I've been out of town for a few days, and my boyfriend picked me up from the airport and we went straight to his place. Karen and Todd acted happy to see me. Of course they did. What choice did they have? After a surprisingly quiet and peaceful dinner, we decided to go to bed. This is how the conversation that followed went. So my boyfriend said, "Karen, Opie and I are going to bed. If your kids are going to watch TV, just make sure the volume is down." "What do you mean, you and her? You can't sleep in the same room, not while my kids are here." "What? You can live a sinful lifestyle all you want, but I don't want my kids exposed to it. I don't want to have to explain to them why a man and a woman who are not husband and wife are sleeping in the same bed. It will be a bad influence on them." "You're in my home, Karen. You can't enforce your rules here. Just go to bed and keep your nose out of where it doesn't belong. Besides, it's not like we're having sex in front of your kids. I don't see how this would affect them." Then Todd got involved. "She's right, you know. You really shouldn't be sleeping together if you're not married. But if you're gonna do that anyway, you should just go to her place." "I have a better idea. Why don't you pack your trash and get the frick out of my apartment?" Karen then starts wiping off invisible tears. "How could you say that? We're family. Why would you try to traumatize our kids with your sinful lifestyle? You're just being cruel. Our kids are being raised in a godly home and I'm protecting them from sin." My boyfriend now raises his voice. "I haven't started to get cruel yet. Just pack your things and go stay in a hotel room." Now Todd, being the slightly more sensible one, knew that my boyfriend meant business and he somehow got his wife to go to the guest room. He then apologized to my boyfriend and spewed some kind of BS about his wife being upset due to recent events, the fire, and that she didn't know what she was saying as an excuse for her behavior. My boyfriend told him they could stay, but to remember that he wasn't going to be pushed around in his own home. Later on, as we were busy engaging in our favorite activity, my trashy side had the urge to scream loud enough for the entitled family to hear.